Season Traveller live talks, where we are talking you through what the low seasons are like on the continent of Africa for the past 5 weeks. And this week, it's the turn of Tanzania. So you're all very welcome. As always, what we're going to do first off is we're going to show you a little bit of an overview as to what Tanzania offers during the low seasons. And then we're going to bring on our guest, our regular guest, Warren, who's going to talk to us about the different experiences that can be had during the low seasons in Tanzania. So first off, let's go straight into the video. So there you go. Oops.
Unforgettable.
Remove. Sorry about that. Slight technical hiccup. So there, a very brief overview. I actually had a look for a bit of a longer overview, but there was nothing less than about 8 or 9 minutes. And I thought that was probably a little bit too long for the purposes of today. So hopefully at the end of this, maybe we'll get out to Tanzania and we'll record our own. At this juncture, I'd just like to say a big shout out to our very good friends at Africa Rome, who've kindly supported this mini-series on Africa. Big shout out to those guys. Thank you very much. Rue, who has been with us for the past few weeks, who's the founder and CEO of Africa Rome, unfortunately isn't able to join us today, but I'm sure she'll be watching somewhere. So hi to you, Rue. Hope you're well. And let's bring on our regular guest. Those of you that have been following this series so far will be familiar with Warren, who is our regular guest on the show. He's a specialist naturalist guide, an explorer, a photographer, a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, and he's done projects with Animal Planet and National Geographic, plus many, many more. So let's bring Warren onto the show. Warren, hopefully you will be... There you are. How are you?
Hey, Jed. How are you doing?
I'm very good indeed. I'm very good. How have you been?
I've been fantastic, thank you. Yeah, looking forward to this week.
Yeah, very good. Well, it just seems to get better the more we discover about what Africa offers during the low season months, and each of the different countries just seems to get for me anyway, gets more and more exciting and more frustrating that I'm not able to travel to these places right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing all this build up and the research for these weekly live sessions, and it's getting me wanting to get out there very quickly again. So I'm missing it as much as I think you or anyone else is. So as soon as we can get out there again, I'm going to be out there. But yeah, I mean, you talk about that video being very short, and I just wonder if we're going to have the time to go through it all today because there is so much to cover.
Well, it is true, and we were talking before just off air, and just for our listeners and viewers' point of view, we were just saying how it's incredibly hard to condense all of these incredible destinations into 1 hour. Well, it's impossible. Actually, it is impossible. So really, again, for our listeners and our viewers, I suppose we should point out that this is really just to whet your appetite. It's barely an hors d'oeuvre, really, but hopefully, the programs like today and the previous weeks where we've covered off some fantastic destinations, they just are enough to whet people's appetite and to give them a really good overview as to why they need to find out more.
Yeah. No, I agree. And
so let's crack on with it, Warren.
Let's get straight into it.
Let's get straight into it. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight on to an overview of Tanzania. So over to you, Warren.
Okay, well, it's I don't know where to start with this because I want to say Tanzania has everything. From its massive mammal migrations, which it's so well known for, endless savannas, It's got the snow and the glaciers of Kilimanjaro. It's got statuesque Maasai warriors, exotic palm front beaches, on the coast. But all of this with a little bit of an edge, which is what I love about it. And I think Tanzania first gained sort of worldwide fame when Ernest Hemingway wrote about it in his book called The Green Hills of Africa. And I have to say this, I'm very embarrassed to say this, that I haven't yet read that book. So it's definitely on my to-do list. But yeah, it's a massive, massive country. It lies on the east coast of Africa. It's bordered by Kenya and Uganda in the north. It's got Burundi, Rwanda, the Democratic Republic of Congo to its west, the Indian Ocean to its east, and then down south it's got Zambia, Malawi, and Mozambique. So it's a massive country, and it's got a lot of neighbors. There's so much to cover on this country that I just want to get into it and start going. It's going to be a little taste of everything if I can and cover it and give it to people to understand. But it's a stunning place. There's a map of it exactly where it is in Africa. And then I've just put a few more sort of comparisons of the size of it, one to the US there, and I think you have one to Europe. But I mean, I think this one blows my mind the most out of any of the maps. It's a huge country, and you can see that. And sadly, a lot of people only typically stick to the very northern part of Tanzania, and we call it the Northern Circuit, and it's the frenetic, chaotic, crazy circuit. It's got all the well-known names of Ngorongoro Crater, the Serengeti, Mount Kilimanjaro, and with good reason people go there. They're beautiful places, but I want to get people into the rest of Tanzania and say that there's a lot more to see.
It was interesting, Warren, when we were preparing the slides. I've been in the travel industry for 25 plus years, and sold Africa at a variety of times. But of all of the places that we're going to be going through today, I've probably heard of 2 or 3, and they're the ones which always used to feature in the brochures, were on the main websites, and they're the ones that you sort of know about. And it kind of blew my mind a little bit seeing some of the other areas. And it's just, again, it's that, I don't know if it's, sometimes I think, I'll speak for myself, I won't speak for the whole travel trade, but from a personal point of view, maybe I've been a bit lazy in the past in just sticking to, what we know. And it's the Serengeti, it's Ngorongoro Crater. That's what we know. We know that there's products there, and therefore that's what we sell, and that's what we promote. And yet there's just so much more, isn't there?
Well, I hate to say this on a negative sort of format, but I think a lot of people get sold the copy and paste of the easy, let's just get you there, and it's this. It's very simple. And I think a lot of people are very nervous to sell the rest of Tanzania and what it has, and not just Tanzania, it's any country in Africa. It's got those unique areas that are, it's easy to sell. It's they've got the big names, and but. Yeah, I wish people, and I hope people take out of this that there's just so much more to explore.
Yep, I hope they will. This is a map of some of the main parks, which I think we're going to feature later on anyway. So we'll come back to that. But let's dive straight in. We know we're short of time. Sorry, go on, Warren. Were you going to say something? Did you want me to go back on that one?
Well, no, I just wanted to say, if you want to bring up that map on a big screen, just so people can have a quick look at it, if you want to pull it full screen, and just to give people a bit of an idea of where everything is. Now, the northern section, the border with Kenya, that's the Northern Circuit. So you'll see there's Mount Kilimanjaro, Arusha, Tarangire, Ngorongoro Crater, the Serengeti. That's the well-known area of Tanzania, exactly where your mouse is. I want to start off, and I'm going to start off with the southern Tanzania, and that's if you go right down to the south, you got the Selous Game Reserve, which is the largest game reserve in the world. To the west of that, you got the Ruaha National Park, just in sort of pinkish mauve there. And then, further to the west there's Katavi, there's Mahali Mountains on Lake Tanganyika. We're going to be talking about all these places, and then we're going to obviously pop along to the coastline, to the Spice Islands, Zanzibar, Pemba, Mafia, Very well-known sort of scuba diving destination. There's a lot more history there, especially with Zanzibar.
Yeah.
So, Tanzania is a massive place. And if you think of that map in conjunction to Europe, it's a big place to get around. But it can be done. And I just think people, if they have the adventure spirit in them, this is a place that you can not spend 10 days, but probably spend 10 weeks exploring it.
Yeah, for sure. I hadn't realized that. So Salou, did you say is the largest national park?
So there's largest game reserve. So national parks, game reserve, very similar to when we were talking in Zambia about game management areas. So the protected area of Salou is one of the largest in the world. It's bigger than Switzerland. Just to put into perspective, it's twice the size of the Serengeti. It's huge. It's massive. So yeah, it's not many people know about it. A lot of people have heard might have heard about Frederick Salou, and this is where it all comes from. But let's get into southern Tanzania and let's start talking about the Salou. So those are the parks that we're going to cover. The Salou, the Ruaha, Katavi, and Mahali. Now, Katavi, Mahali are in the west. The Salou and the Ruaha are in the south. And just to start off with the Salou, as I said, 50,000 square kilometers, twice the size of the Serengeti. There's a good sort of picture of where exactly it is in Tanzania. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I think it was named that in 1982, so it's been like that for a very long time. And it's named after Frederick Salou, and he was a big game hunter and a conservationist who actually died fighting the Germans in World War I in the Salou. There's actually a lodge called Beho, and there's a river that runs past there. And he was shot by a sniper, a German sniper in World War I, and he died there. And his grave is still there to this day. So if you are interested in history, this is definitely a place that you want to find yourself and go and explore. But what I love about the Salou, it's got the Rufiji River, and there's just a small little section of it. And the Rufiji River, it's a complex network of channels, lakes, swamps, and it creates one of the most outstanding ecological systems in East Africa. It has over 400 species of birds, the mammal populations that support the claim that it's probably the greatest surviving African wilderness in Africa. It's huge. Now, with the Rufiji River, you have just north of that, so the whole area north of that is set aside for ecotourism. South of that is set aside for hunting. So Tanzania is a big hunting destination, but what they've done is they've separated one side for ecotourism, which I think is fantastic. They're looking after that place. Sadly, poachers have taken it out quite significantly, especially the elephants. But we need to get tourists back there to help with that.
That's sorry. On the hunting, I wasn't aware of it. Is this hunting? This is tourism. It's hunting tourism, is it?
So it'll be classified under tourism. Yeah. So you get big game hunting or trophy hunting, whatever it might be. But Tanzania is one of the larger countries in Africa that support trophy hunting. And this is probably a discussion for another time, but it's what side of the fence do you sit on, and you got to look at it from both sides. Hunting. I'm not a hunter. I don't like the concept of trophy hunting, but it's got a necessary evil in that it protects a large amount of Africa, and it protects these areas and looks after these areas from having poachers come in and the bushmeat trade. And it stops people from going and settling in these areas and destroying it. So there is a good side, if I can say that tongue in cheek, with hunting. So it's I think that's what's one of the things that's kept the Salou the way that it is. It's wild.
Yep, fair play. Ruaha.
This is possibly my favorite part of Tanzania. It's the largest national park. So now we're talking national park as opposed to game reserve. So, and I possibly think it's Tanzania's best kept secret. And during the low season, Jed, it is phenomenal. April, May, it is one of the parts in Tanzania that is absolutely out of this world. Now, just to talk about sort of the seasons in Tanzania, it's got a very tricky season, and it's not like Southern Africa where you have your summer and your winter and your rains and your non-rains. East Africa, now we're getting into rainy season, non-rainy season, but they have two rainy seasons. So typically November to May is summer, and the exception of January, February in the Serengeti, when it can get very busy from the calving of the wildebeest. So you get a lot of sort of, that's peak time.
Yep.
So April and May typically are the long rains. Now, when they talk about long rains, they're talking about there's a lot of rain. It doesn't, not necessarily long as in a period, but it's just there's a lot of rain that falls. And with that, a lot of lodges close down for that period. So April and May, you've got to be very careful about where you choose to go if you want to go. A lot of the places you won't be able to get to because the ground is so waterlogged. And then in sort of November time, they have the short rains. Now, the short rains, it's not because they're shorter, it's just less rain, but it does still happen. So you can work your way around that. And those are probably the best low season months, I would say, is anywhere from February to March time, and then sort of as soon as those rains end, so end of May going into June, a shoulder season would probably be the best time. But then again, you know, if you choose the right place, any time of the year in Tanzania is phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this on, you know, on a few of the different destinations that we've covered now, is this the one of the challenges, I suppose, with tourism in Africa is that, and look, this is the challenge with over-tourism, and we're going to come on to this right at the very end of today's show. But this is the challenge of over-tourism. It's not that there isn't enough room for all of the tourists, it's just the fact that they all concentrate in one place. And you know, we've said it a few times that there's certain destinations where all of the tourists congregate in the same destinations each time during the peak times of the year. And actually, even though it's the peak time of the year, you know, there can be other destinations, you know, 200 kilometers away or whatever, that are practically deserted and there's no tourists there. So I'm guessing that Tanzania, it's just the same, right?
Exactly. You know, I think one of the biggest things, and we're digressing a bit now, but it's just, I think one of the biggest requests that you get people when they come to East Africa, they want to see the migration, and it's you can see the migration, but you got to realize if you're going to see the migration, you're going to have another migration that shadows that migration. That's people. But I always say this, and I say this very carefully, but I always say this, that you can see the migration if you are exceptionally flexible in your timing and you don't mind being a little bit adventurous and you know, exploring it. I've been in the middle of the migration of 2.5 million animals, and I've been the only people there. I've been the only person, the only vehicle. So it can be done. You just got to know how to do it right. And you need to make sure that the people you working with, booking the safari, knows exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it. So, but yeah, let's move on to the Ruaha, because I haven't really touched base on that. And if you go back, I mean, this leopard in a baobab tree is probably one of my favorite, but that scene there with elephants under the palms, that's the Ruaha for you. And that's the Mugusi River. It's a riverbed that runs through. It's one of the riverbeds. You know, the Ruaha River is a massive river that runs to the south of the park. But this place has excellent wildlife viewing, and it's particularly good for predator viewing. It has massive crowds of lions. It has endangered wild dogs. It's also an outstanding wilderness appeal. So, you know, and this is something that I really love, if you want to go and experience as raw wild Africa as possible with no roads, no human sort of interference, this is a park you want to go to, because you can go and do a walk, a safari walk, and you can walk for 5-6 hours and you won't cross a road. You won't even a little Jeep 2-track. There are massive areas in this region that you can go and explore, and that's what I love about it. It just has this proper outstanding wilderness appeal to it. And with that, it's got very few exclusive camps, and there's no basic camps. It's pretty comfortable. I don't want to say luxury, but they're comfortable camps. So, you know, the people that do go here are they're looking for that adventure. They're looking to get away from the crowds. And I almost don't like talking about the Ruaha because I don't want more people to know about it.
Don't need to be crowded.
It does, but it is difficult to get there, and you need to, the logistics wise, you got to have that done properly. There are a lot of flight companies that are opening up flights there now, which are making it easier, but it's still a spectacular park, and when we start talking about bird life, for example, the diversity there is unreal. And that's purely because the Ruaha, it sits in a transitional zone of acacia savannas of East Africa and then the Miombo woodlands of Southern Africa. So you get a mix of both, of East African bird species, Southern African bird species. As I said, it's probably one of the best places in East Africa to encounter wild dogs or the African painted wolf. It has very unusual antelope species, lesser kudu, roan, sable antelope, and then you get these massive baobab trees, which it's a tree I love. They're everywhere. They're scattered throughout the landscape, and this has actually got a funny story to it, because up until this photograph, I was yet to see a leopard in a baobab tree, and I said to our guide on our arrival, this was probably a good 5-6 years ago, I think. I said, if you can find me a leopard in a baobab tree, you would be a friend for life. And we got this, and we're still friends today. So
really,
he's a phenomenal guide. He actually won Guide of the Year, I think, last year for Tanzania. So he's a phenomenal
how did he get that leopard up in the tree? I don't know.
Yeah, I think he placed it there strategically, but no, I think he was just a phenomenal guide. And that's the other thing, you got to be able to work and get to know these guides, and it makes the experience. Having a good guide it's 10 times better than actually just sort of going there on your own. So, absolutely. And that's the landscape, it's just stunning. It's got these palm trees, it's got baobab trees. It's a stunning park. It's a wilderness. It's just stunning. I love it.
Awesome. Onwards to Katavi.
So now we're heading into the west. Now, if you thought that the Ruaha was remote and out of the way, Katavi is even more so.
Really?
It's extremely remote, Katavi. And sometimes some people have said you see more lions there than you see people, which is right down my alley. That's sort of my kind of appeal. So, but it's such a stunning park, and there's so many operators that have wanted to open camps in Katavi, but the logistics and the costs involved, it's just too difficult. And if I stand to be corrected, but I think there's only 4 camps right now, and that's 4 camps in over, I think it's about 4,500 square kilometers.
Wow.
So if you're wanting quietness away from the crowds, and as I said, low season, high season, this is always low season, because
it's always low season.
No one gets out there unless they really want to go and explore a park that no one else has seen. It's not many people know about it. So, and
how hard is it to get there? Like, is it really that out of the way?
It's not. I mean, there are flights that get you there, and it's just you got to manage those flights into a schedule, and it's you got to look very carefully at the logistics of how to get there, the timing of when to get there from a weather perspective. But to be honest with you, I don't think it's that hard. If people don't mind doing a few little plane hops, it's not a problem at all.
All part of the adventure, Warren, isn't it?
Exactly. No, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, Mahale.
Mahale. Now, what I love about Mahale, and I think this is the last thing that people probably think about when they think about Tanzania, is this is probably one of the best places to see chimpanzee.
Right.
And Tanzania has, Mahale is home to the densest population of primates in Tanzania. You got yellow baboons, you got red colobus, blue and red-tailed vervet monkeys, and I think there's probably just over 1,000 chimpanzees that you have the possibility of seeing. They have got habituated groups that you go and you walk, so very similar to gorilla trekking. So you'll actually go out and trek and have a look. But to go and spend time with chimpanzees and on foot, and there's one really relaxed group that you could be walking and it'd be like having a child walking next to you. They're just that relaxed with you.
Wow.
So it's a stunning park. It has been quoted as probably being one of Africa's most beautiful parks. If you can picture this, it's got a lakeshore beach. So basically, you're on Lake Tanganyika, and this beach has got this fine powder white sand. Behind you have this range of mountains that's thick in tropical vegetation that sort of rise up. One of my favorite camps there, it looks like a scene out of Robinson Crusoe. It's a spectacular place. It really is. It's a place to go and really chill, to go and relax, but to get a proper wilderness experience, and something very unique from a chimpanzee perspective. And if you look at the months, August to October, it's probably the best time to and the easiest time to trek the chimps. Once again, it doesn't really have a high season. If you pick the time correctly, you can be there all on your own.
Yeah, fascinating seeing chimps. I always think, with primates in general, could sit and watch them for hours, just watching the social interactions. Obviously, they're such sort of social creatures, but watching the different interactions and then just thinking how ridiculously similar they are to us in so many. It's frightening, really, isn't it?
Well, I mean, and that's exactly, I think, the whole thing about watching these great apes. And we talk about chimps, gorillas, bonobos. It's and humans. We are part of the great apes, and a lot of people might argue with me on that, and that might be another discussion. But it's you're 100% correct. You look at these animals, you look at the way they work with each other, their fingers, the way they use they use tools. It's your heart sits here, and it's just you're really feeling like you're looking at a kindred spirit.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, onward to northern Tanzania safaris.
The northern Tanzania, and I wanted to get the southern Tanzania and western Tanzania out, because I think that northern Tanzania is what most people will know of when we talk about Tanzania. And I mentioned that in the beginning with the Tarangire, Lake Manyara, and Ngorongoro Crater in the Serengeti. But so we basically are right up in the northern part, just on just below the border of Kenya. And you'll see the parks there. So we're going to talk about Tarangire National Park. We're going to talk about Lake Manyara, which is a very small little park, which is just on the border of that very small lake there. So if you just to the right a little bit.
We're here.
To the right more. There we go. More.
Sorry.
There, that's it. So it's a tiny little park, but it forms part of a massive system, which was part of Lake Eyasi, and Ngorongoro Crater, Lake Natron, and then into the Serengeti, and we'll get into that a bit later. But we can start with Tarangire, and Tarangire sits between the plains of the Masai Steppe to the southeast, and the lakes of the Great Rift Valley to the northwest. And it's one of 4 parks, and in what I typically would say is a very famous and very busy northern circuit. I think one of the reasons why the northern circuit is so busy is you've got Kilimanjaro Airport, which is an international airport. People fly directly into Kilimanjaro, or they come from Nairobi into Kilimanjaro, and it's very easy for them to get around. So the logistics is easy. It's also not that difficult to drive around if you have the time to drive from Kilimanjaro, Tarangire, Lake Manyara, Ngorongoro, Serengeti. A lot of people do that if you have the time. So, as I said, the Northern Circuit, exceptionally busy, but Tarangire is often one of the parks that is missed out on a safari. And I think it's sad that people it's almost, if they do go there, they're literally there for one night. And then they're out. It's like, okay, tick off the list. We've been to Tarangire. Now let's go to the Serengeti or the Ngorongoro Crater. It's a spectacular wild park. It's got, for me, the southern part of Tanzania of Tarangire is by far the best part of Tarangire. It has an air of real wilderness to it. It's got a lot of swampy areas that fill up in the wet season. This draws a lot of animals in when they start to dry out. It's got massive herds of elephants, buffalo, some pretty unique antelope species, all the predators that you could have. So from a safari perspective, to me, people need to spend at least 3-4 nights here before they move on to really enjoy the park. I said to me, the southern park to me is the best, but that's because no one really goes to the south. The northern part of this park is easy accessible. And this is where people will often come in for one night and then leave very quickly. So it's just a park that I think, and I wish people would spend more time in, because it really is. It's a proper wilderness park, and a place that I love.
Lake Manyara, so that's very close by.
So Lake Manyara is not far. It's an easy park to access. It's probably about a 90-minute drive from Arusha. So Arusha is, if I can say, the capital of the safari circuit in the northern part of Tanzania. And it sits at the base of Mount Meru. So we're going to get into Mount Meru a bit later on. So it's an easy park to get to, and it's an easy drive to get to Lake Manyara. Sadly, most people will only visit it en route to the crater. So it is, if you want to get to Ngorongoro crater, it's okay, let's pop in, have a quick look at some of the picnic sites or on side of the lake. Brilliant flamingos, bird life, hippos, all that kind of stuff. And it's stunning. It's scenically a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. But people bypass it very quickly. And to me, the southern section, once again, like Tarangire, is by far the best. There is I think there's definitely one, I think there might be two permanent, I'm just quickly thinking of this. I think there's only one permanent lodge that's in Lake Manyara, and that's way down in the south. And to me, it's, once again, go and spend the time down there because you won't have the crowds. The crowds come in very quickly and move. And low season is a phenomenal time. It's people, as I said, typically will bypass it. And it's what's made Manyara very famous is it's become well known for tree climbing lions. So you get these big prides of lions that climb up into these trees and just hang out like a leopard would hang out in the top of these trees. And there's a lot of theories why they do that, but I don't think anyone's been able to speak lion yet and figure out exactly why.
Are they in some way? Do we think that in some way they're adapting to a different sort of environment, or is there any sort of hypothesis on it?
There are quite a few hypotheses and theories that have been put out there, and to me, there's two, and one is when it gets really hot. To get up into the trees, you get more of a breeze coming through, which helps cool them down. And the other theory I've heard is that it's one way to get rid of tsetse fly. Now, in Tanzania and in parts that we go, we have to put up with tsetse fly, and tsetse fly don't carry sleeping sickness anymore, so that's all been eradicated. They're just a nuisance. That's a really horrible nuisance, and they'll bite you. They'll bite you through thick jackets.
Really? Through jackets?
Through jackets, through jeans, pants. People say wear light-colored clothing. Don't wear darks, blacks, blues, that kind of stuff. I've been bitten through white clothing before, so I don't know the theory on that. But the theory about the lions climbing trees is that they're trying to get away from the tsetse flies. I don't know whether that's true. I take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. So, but
I'm just horrified that there are flies that can bite through clothing.
Actually, this jacket that I'm wearing now, I've been bitten through. I have. But don't let that deter you. I always say, if it wasn't for the malaria mosquitoes, if it wasn't for tsetse flies, we wouldn't have any of these wilderness areas because they would have been taken over by people a long time ago.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Yeah, good point. Ngorongoro. I was struggling there for a second.
Ngorongoro. Yeah. So Ngorongoro, Serengeti, I want to talk about these areas because they're also well known. And if you look at that map that you've put on now, the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, so what's known as the NCA, Ngorongoro Conservation Area, It's a very large area that incorporates it borders on the Serengeti, but it also borders on a game controlled area to the north, a game reserve to the west. This is one massive ecosystem, and I think a lot of people don't realize. They think it's just the Serengeti on its own, or it's just Ngorongoro on its own. But for Ngorongoro, and this is something that I have a love-hate relationship with Ngorongoro Crater. The love that I have is that it's a 3 million-year-old volcano that erupted and collapsed in on itself. So it's the world's largest intact volcanic caldera. It's about 19 kilometers in diameter, and its walls are between 400 and 600 meters in height. It's a phenomenal natural wonder. It really, really is a phenomenal natural wonder. Inside this caldera, you literally have, it's a smorgasbord of wildlife, and it's literally like a contained zoo in a way. And I hate using that word, but the animals are down there. You've got so many different ecosystems that are inside this micro ecosystems that are inside this crater, from soda lakes to freshwater springs to big sort of acacia forests. It's a mind-blowing place to go and have a look at. But the hate that I have with it is that it's oversold, and we're going to get to the over tourism part of it later on. I always advise everyone, if you're going to go to Ngorongoro Crater, go and have a look at it, but stay on the rim, stay on the top.
Yeah.
It's stunning. It's like you're in this rainforest. The fog comes in. It's very cold. So even if you go in the height of summer, it can be exceptionally cold. But scenically, it's stunning. And just enjoy the rim. Go for a bushwalk on the rim. Get a guide and go for a walk on the rim. Don't go down into the crater. And I'm saying this very carefully now, because typically 99% of people are going to go onto the Serengeti to go and view wildlife, or they have come from the Serengeti, or Lake Manyara, or Tarangire. And to me, if you go down into the crater, you're going to be fighting, and this is even in the low season. I mean, the low season it's a lot less, but even in the low season, you can get a lot of vehicles down in that crater. And just to give you an example, I used to work in Tanzania. I was managing and guiding at a camp in the western part of the Serengeti. And we used to have our management meetings at a lodge on the rim of the crater. And I think it was like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I decided I was finished. I wanted to go take a drive down into the crater. And this was pretty much bordering on the low season. I had to sign in to where the descent is when you go down into the crater. And when I signed in, I had to look at the number. And I was the 387th vehicle that day to go down into the crater. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, okay, there were 387 or 86 vehicles before me that went down into this crater today. So, it's a bun fight down there. You see animals, you can't drive off the road. It's a protected area. And this is why I say, for me, the best part of Ngorongoro Crater is stay on the rim, enjoy the people. And this is one thing I love about Ngorongoro, is that the Maasai tribes, we're going to talk about the Maasai later, the Maasai work with the conservation area, and that they have cattle. So you'll be driving along, and they're going to be herding their cattle down into the crater to go and graze. And 500 meters that way, there's going to be a pride of lions looking at these guys. This is Africa, and this is what I love about Ngorongoro Crater. So it has got that real romance to it of safaris in Africa. But yeah, just be careful. If people are going to go to Ngorongoro Crater, I always suggest spend 2 or 3 nights, preferably 3. Relax, enjoy the room, and then on one full day, take a drive. It's quite a long drive, north of Ngorongoro Crater to another crater called Empakai Crater. Now, we're going to get into this a bit later because this is a phenomenal trek and walk. But Empakai Crater, it's a deep soda lake that covers about half of the crater floor. It's about 6 kilometers wide, the caldera, so it's a lot smaller than Ngorongoro Crater, but no one goes there once again, and you are able to walk down into this crater. You can go have a picnic on the bottom you take a local guide with you. The scenes from the top of this crater, from Empakai Crater, you're having a look north towards the Maasai's mountain of God, which is Ordonyo Lengai. So it's the most sacred place for the Maasai, which is an active volcano. We're going to get into that a bit later as well. It's just a spectacular place, and it's part of the Soda Lakes. It gets covered with flamingos at the right time of the year. So yeah, Ngorongoro Crater, I love. Go and have a look at Empokai Crater. Just time it correctly, but you got to have the people on the ground that know what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Serengeti. I think everybody's heard of the Serengeti at least. Needs no introduction, does it really?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with the Serengeti, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I love the Serengeti. And there are parts of the Serengeti that I have a big love for. Now, if you pull that map up, the Serengeti is just to give you a bit of a background, it's 15,000 square kilometers, but it's just the center of a much bigger ecosystem, and that's called the Serengeti Mara ecosystem. And that other part of it covers more than double of the actual Serengeti. So you look at the Grumeti, which is that L shape, sort of on the left hand side there. So it's sort of tucked into that's it there exactly. That's the Grumeti area, the Grumeti reserves. You got the Ikorongo. You got the Loliondo area on the eastern side, the controlled area. You got Ngorongoro Conservation Area. You got the Maswa Game Reserve down south, right at the bottom. And then, a lot of people forget about it, but it's part of the system. But just because it's in a different country, they don't really think about it. And that's the Masai Mara.
Yeah.
And that's right way up in the north.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be talking about that next week when we cover Kenya. But just remember this, and I'd love to keep this map for next week, because the Masai Mara is tiny compared to what's below it in Tanzania, and it's got such a well-known name. And for me, the Serengeti is a very special place. And if you, sorry, Jed, if you just open that map up again, my most favorite part, and it's very, very difficult to see it, is way up in the north on the border of Tanzania, Kenya, and the Mara River. So the river comes down and it runs to Lake Victoria, and there's a tiny little wedge right up in the north there. That's called the Lamai Wedge. That's it there. That to me is the most stunning part of the Serengeti. My second would probably be way down in the south, very close to Maswa Game Reserve. But you can get, and this is the thing about the Serengeti, it varies. It's so diverse. It's not just the open flat plains. It's got thickets. It's got little rocky outcrops. It is such a varied area to go through and explore. But you can do the Serengeti without the crowds, and it's stunning. And after the rains, it's scenically beautiful. It's just green grass. It's beautiful trees. The sunsets are amazing. It is. It's a highlight, and I know why people sell it the way it is.
Yeah, it's a brand almost, isn't it? The Serengeti. So, like you say, Serengeti, Masai Mara. If you haven't heard of anywhere else in Africa, you've heard of those too.
100%, absolutely. It is a brand.
Yeah. It's funny actually. It was interesting. I was saying to my wife that we were going to be doing Tanzania, and she said Serengeti straight away. And she was saying, I just, for some reason, she said, I have in my head cheetahs, images of cheetahs running full pelt on the Serengeti, seeing it on programs or whatever else. It just, I don't know. It just seems.
And that's exactly, and that's what the Serengeti is well known for. The cheetah viewing is phenomenal. Yeah. And it's cheetah, lion, leopard a bit more harder, but and I think one of the easier ones with cheetah is that they're diurnal species, so they're active during the day. They hunt during the early morning, evening, so it is a lot easier to stay with them and to see them. And this is something that has to be very carefully controlled, because I'm not sure if you've seen a lot of videos going around with, and I saw another one this morning, sadly, of cheetah climbing onto vehicles and almost interacting with the guests inside the vehicle, and people thinking it's a fantastic thing to have, and it really upsets me.
That's a worry.
It's a big worry, and I know in the Masai Mara, going to Kenya, is that cheetah numbers started to dwindle because vehicles were literally surrounding. There were so many vehicles that would surround a cheetah that's trying to hunt just to get a view. So this animal was not unable to hunt. So there have been a bit more controls that have been put into place, but yeah, that's the negative side of the over tourism once again.
Yeah, absolutely. Alderpie Gorge.
So if people are interested in anything paleoanthropological, then this is a must-see site. It's possibly one of the most important paleoanthropological sites in the world. And it holds the remains of the earliest hominins that have ever been found on Earth. They were first discovered by archaeologists Louis and Mary Leakey. I think it was in the late 1950s, 1958, 59, somewhere around there. The first skull discovered was actually named Zinjanthropus, or what's known as the Nutcracker Man, and is believed to have lived about 1.75 million years ago. 1.75 million. It's a long time ago if you start trying to sort of get your head around that. But other important finds there have been Homo habilis and the Liatoli footprints. So the Liatoli footprints are some of the most ancient and intact footprints ever found of a hominin. Archaeologists they continue to go work those excavation sites looking for anything, and they are open to public viewing, and they've been preserved. So it is a phenomenal place to go and explore and go and find out more about our ancient history, if you want to put it like that.
This is where we get across the. Is this? I mean, we're in the neck of the woods, which is known as the cradle of humanity, right? This is this kind of whole area.
So it depends on which sort of archaeologist you're talking to, whether they're in Southern Africa or East Africa, because they're all going to argue. But the one thing I love about East Africa is that they can carbon date sort of their finds almost or a lot more precisely than Southern Africa. And the reason they can do that is because of the Rift Valley, which we will talk about a bit later today, is all this carbon that goes up into the air from the volcanoes that erupt, land. And then you have this layer. So you get a carbon layer, then you get a layer of soil.
Yeah.
And then you get another carbon layer when the next volcano erupted on top of that. So you can work out exactly, pretty much, almost exactly, to the point of how old this find is that you've got. In Southern Africa, I'm careful because I'm not an anthropologist, but it's pretty much a thumbsuck. They try and figure it out, okay, roughly between, and it's a lot broader scale that they can try and figure out how old it is. And when we talk next week, we're going to talk about Kenya. We're going to go up into Lake Turkana, and Turkana, there's some more phenomenal finds that the Leakeys have found up there. So it's definitely a place to go and have a look at. It's very dusty, it's very sandy, it's very hot. But if you're interested in our history, our human history, it goes back a long way.
Absolutely. We're going to move now on to some of the great trekking which Tanzania has to offer.
So I put this in because I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of trekking to do and I put trekking / climbing.
I took the climbing off, sorry.
No problem. Trekking, I think the first thing and the only thing most people think about is Kilimanjaro. Yeah. And I'm not really going to speak too much on Kilimanjaro, but I can go into it. It's a phenomenal mountain. It's the tallest single standing mountain in the world. It's the highest mountain in Africa. It's the highest peak in Africa. It's 5,895 meters in height, which is, I think it's about 19,000 feet. And to climb it, to trek it, it's not a difficult climb. There's 7 different routes that you can climb this mountain. And it all depends on, once again, it's how much your budget is and how much time do you have. And I would always go, if you have the time, go for the longer route. Yeah. And the reason being is that you're going to acclimatize quicker and easier. If you go on the shorter route, you typically won't acclimatize that well. And some people do, they're lucky, but most time they don't. And I think a lot of people underestimate this mountain. You do and you will more than likely suffer altitude sickness if you do climb it very quickly and incorrectly. So if you do want to climb Kilimanjaro, do the research and get a reputable company that's going to actually take you up, and spend the money. Rather do that little bit extra to go climb up, because it's something really special. I think I've climbed it 4 or 5 times,
Wow.
and every time it's new. It's a different feeling. It's a different experience. My body reacted differently each time I went up. The hardest part of that mountain is your ascent night. So the night they wake you up at 12 o'clock at night. So you will literally be climbing from 12 a.m. all the way through to getting to the summit, which you've got there at sunrise, because that's when you want to be up there. And this mountain differs throughout the year. And, there's a picture of it, no snow, and there's a picture with it with snow. So, it's hard to say exactly when there's going to be a lot of snow on top. It's hard to pinpoint that down.
Have you climbed it when there's been snow on top?
Yeah, I have, and it's cold. It's really. I'm used to warmer climbs, and it's a very, very cold experience.
It's interesting on your earlier point about it being, it's well reputed as being a climb which it is possible for an awful lot of people to be able physically to climb it. But I will say again, for all of our viewers and listeners, I know of quite a few people who've done these charity treks, up to Kilimanjaro, and they haven't got to do the final push for the peak because they've been suffering with altitude sickness. So I think it just does go to show you, like you were saying before, I think exactly right. You have to give it the respect it's due. Yes, most people can. They have got the physicality to be able to climb it, but you still have to respect it and respect the fact that it's high.
Absolutely. And, this is the thing that I always try and really express to people is that, excuse me, you're coming a long way. You're going to be spending a lot of money to get there.
Yeah.
You're going to be spending a lot of money to climb it. Rather spend a little bit more that you can actually acclimatize properly. And take your time to get to the top, because the last thing you want to do is get to what's known as base camp and be told you're getting down. We're taking you down because you're going to die if you carry on going up. So, don't underestimate the mountain at all.
Yep. Mount Meru.
So Mount Meru, I'm not going to talk too much on it. Just it's a mountain that literally it's the neighbor of Kilimanjaro. It's 4,500, I think 60 odd meters in height, so 14,900 feet. It's at the base, Arusha, the town is at the base of Mount Meru, so very easy from how to get to it. It's more of a challenging climb in the sense that it just goes through a lot more different sort of experiences. But it's a stunning climb. It really is. And, for those that have the time and like to climb these kind of mountains, it's just something that I would say just keep on your radar. Don't sort of think Kilimanjaro is the only place. Mount Meru is there as well, and it's a challenge. It really is. It's not an easy hike as well. You have to be pretty fit to be up top there. But don't forget about Mount Meru.
Yeah, looks stunning views from it with Kili in the background.
Yeah.
Aldonyu Lengai.
No, Aldonyu Lengai, most people, well said. Aldonyu Lengai, most people probably have never heard of Aldonyu Lengai, and it's an active volcano. It's 2,900 meters in height, so about 9,500 feet. It's called the Mountain of God, and it's a stratovolcano, and it's the only active volcano with carbonated lava. So this is lava which is very rich in sodium and potassium and other carbonates. So this makes it highly fluid, which is often less viscous than water. So just to give you an example. Yeah. Now this climb, it's a challenging climb. You have to pick your timing correctly of when to go. It is pretty an active volcano. I think 2013, if I was standing to be corrected, was the last time it erupted. As I said, it is an active volcano. I mentioned Mountain of God. It's the most sacred place for the Maasai tribe. is this volcano, Ordoño Lengai. But it's a stunning the region, the area, and right next to it you're going to have Lake Natron, which we'll talk about with the soda lakes. It's just, there's a picture with a bit of greenery there. Most people haven't been able to get up recently to get up and look into the actual crater because it has changed a bit from the last eruption. But it's a challenging hike, and it's for those more adventurous people that want to go up and really just say they've done it. It's a really spectacular climb, and as I say, the scenery around there for me, I love. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Empekai. Yeah, so you mentioned this before.
I briefly mentioned Empekai when we were talking about Ngorongoro crater. And it's not really a climb as in what the others are, but I mean, that picture I just love, because it's just, as I said, it's about a 2.5 hour drive from Ngorongoro crater. If you're staying in a lodge on the rim of Ngorongoro crater, it's about a 2.5 hour drive to get to Empekai crater. But you're going through traditional Maasai land, Maasai villages. It's authentic. And this is what I love about it, and not many people are heading out there. You get to the rim of Empekai, you park your vehicle. To the north, you have Ordoño Lengai, literally, it feels like a stone's throw away. So you got the scene of this typical stratovolcano that goes up. And then you are able to walk down, you can hike down into Empekai crater. And at the right time of the year, very hard to always say exactly when, but the flamingos come, and that lake can be covered in flamingos, literally pink from end to end. And there's wildlife. People forget about it just because they've moved away from Ngorongoro crater. They think, hang on, there's no more wildlife here. But there's buffalo, there's lion, there's leopard. There's antelope. There's animals around you. You can walk down into this crater and go and experience this pretty much on your own, if you manage it correctly. So it's just a place I love. And as I said, I have this love-hate with Ngorongoro crater, but Empekai is that massive love. That's part of it.
I can tell. Rift Valley Lakes next.
So getting into the Rift Valley Lakes, this is something that I love about Tanzania, and actually the whole of East Africa. And we're going to talk more about this. I think we can go into it again next week when we talk about Kenya. And then with the Rift Valley, it's the Rift Zone. Just to give you a bit of an example, it's a narrow zone that's developing divergent tectonic plate boundaries. So you have an African plate that is splitting into two tectonic plates. I don't want to get too technical into it, but you have the Somali plate and the Nubian plate. So the Somali plate, basically where Somalia is, the Nubian plate moving further inland Africa, if I can put it like that. And this rift is actually moving at around 6 to 7 millimeters a year.
Wow.
So it's a very active zone, and it's covered with volcanoes. It's covered with these soda lakes, and these lakes make a big part of what, for me, a trip to East Africa should be about. So whether you're going to Tanzania or Kenya, and let's focus on Tanzania now, we're going to talk more about the Eastern Rift, and it's known as the Gregory Rift, and that was after a British geologist named John Gregory. This Rift Valley began forming over 20 million years ago. And it's, as I said, it's caused by massive volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and it's forced the valley floor to sink lower, which resulted in a very unique landscape. And to me, it's some of the most outstanding, spectacular landscapes I think you'll ever see. And it's become massively famous for its wildlife in these areas. So, just some of the lakes which I'm going to talk about now, Lake Manyara. We've spoke about that very briefly in the park itself. But Lake Manyara, just going back to Ernest Hemingway once again when he described Tanzania, but Ernest Hemingway described it as the loveliest area that he has ever seen in Africa, around Lake Manyara. And it's picturesque. It has bird life, mammal life. It's soda. Flamingos come in their thousands at the right time of the year. So this is just one of those areas that it's just people should know about. They should know about all these lakes we're actually talking about. I'm not sure, Jed, if you've got a picture there of I think we're talking about Lake Natron, so I'll come back to that later, but just to give people a bit of an idea when we do look at it, where all these lakes are situated. Yep. So the next lake is Lake Eyasi. Not really a massive draw card from a tourist perspective, but for me, from a photographic perspective, it's spectacular. It's known as an endorheic lake. Now, an endorheic lake is a drainage basin which normally retains water and allows no outflow. So it doesn't flow out to any other body. So it gets filled up with rivers, but nothing goes anywhere. Literally, it becomes swamps, or it becomes sort of a permanent or seasonal, how can I say it, sort of like marshland. And it's a lot of evaporation happens from this lake, and so you get these colors that come through from algae blooms. The next lake we're going to talk about is Lake Natron, but Lake Eyasi is, for me, where that ties in is with when we talk about the tribes of Tanzania, and Lake Eyasi is well known for an area or a tribe known as the Hadzabe, which I want to get to just at the end of this. So just understanding Eyasi, just understanding the kind of lake it is, it doesn't get deeper than 1 meter at any point in its time throughout the lake. It's a massive lake, but it doesn't get deeper than 1 meter. It has these purple lava walls which contrast beautifully against the alkaline shallows of this water. And that's why I say, from a photographic perspective, for people that want to do that, it's out of this world.
Love it. Tanganyika.
So Tanganyika, very quickly, it's not a soda lake, but it is part of the Rift Valley. It's the western border of Tanzania. It's the longest freshwater lake in the world at about 670 kilometers long. And it's the deepest in Africa. It's the actual second deepest lake in the world. And it's about 1.4 meters deep. Sorry, 1.4 kilometers deep. So 1,400 meters.
That's not that deep.
1.4 kilometers. That's pretty deep.
Yeah. 1.4 kilometers is for sure.
Is at its deepest. It boasts over 350 different species of fish. It accounts for, and this is what I find amazing, it accounts for about 16% of the world's available fresh water.
No, that's insane.
So it is. It blows my mind every time I think about that. And it's just a lake. And when we're talking about, Mahali, for example, Mahali National Park, you're going to be on Lake Tanganyika. This is one of the large lakes in Africa, and it's Africa, one of Africa's Great Lakes. Yeah. So it's a very special place for fishing, even for diving. There's no crocodiles in there, so you can be careful. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah. But it's a special lake. It's a very, very, it's one of those big lakes you'll see on a big map of Africa.
Yeah. Lake Natron.
And then Lake Natron. Yeah. So Lake Natron is probably one of my favorites. And I'll talk about that map just after I've explained a bit about Lake Natron. So what's interesting with Lake Natron, it's a soda lake, like Manyara and Lake Eyasi as well. It's how can I just to put it into perspective what a soda lake is. I think a lot of people might get a bit confused what a soda lake is. A soda lake is where water will flow in but not out. So it can only escape via evaporation, which leaves behind a very high concentration of salt and other minerals. So very similar to the Dead Sea or to Utah, the Utah Great Salt Lake that they have in the States. But one thing about Lake Natron is it has an extremely alkaline or alkalinity to it, and so high that the pH at times has been measured as high as 10.5 on the pH scale. So wow. That is almost as high as ammonia, just to put into perspective. The one thing about Lake Natron, which I find amazing, and this is because it's also so close to Old Donya Lengai, that active volcano, is that nothing much lives in these waters, because those waters can reach up to 60 degrees centigrade, which is exceptionally warm. And funny enough, there is only one fish species that
What's
will
that?
survive in that, and that is it's a type of tilapia. It's called a wide-lipped natron tilapia, and some algae, and that's about all. And that algae creates this beautiful pink-red algae bloom that you get. And once again, from a photographic perspective, it's just incredible. And then I think there's a big sort of algae bloom that you can see from Lake Natron. And then, for me, it's also the massive flamingo colonies that come to breed, and you're roughly talking about 2.5 million flamingos, and roughly any time between July and October that they will be there. It's really hard to pinpoint when that is, but when the flamingos are there or not, it's still a spectacular place to go and explore and have a look at. So, Jed, if you go back to that map of that area, is just so people can have a look and just see where we are. So we're in northern Tanzania. You'll see Lake Natron right at the top of that picture. And then right down south, you have Lengai. So that's Old Donya Lengai there. Yeah. And then just south of that, you've got Empekai crater, which we've spoken about, at 3,200 meters high. And then south of that, you'll see there's Ngorongoro crater, the much bigger caldera.
Yeah. You really get the size of it there, don't you?
Exactly. And then to the southeast, you get Lake Manyara.
Yeah.
And then to the southwest, you get Lake Eyasi.
Yeah.
So that's just to put that into perspective. And then if you have a look at all those other sort of mountains, those are volcanoes if you look at it. So next to Lake Natron, you have Galai there, you have Kitumbina. So these are all other volcanoes that are in the area that have all pretty much become extinct.
Yeah.
You also see Oldupai Gorge. So just give you an idea where Oldupai Gorge is there on the west. There we go. So this just gives you, if people are watching this, just gives you a bit of an outline of the landscape. And this to me is what I love about Tanzania, is this landscape. It is just, it's ancient. It takes you back millions of years. It really does.
It's got everything, hasn't it? I'll tell you what was interesting. We did a podcast, it was nearly 2 years ago, with the guys from Turismo Valencia.
Okay.
In Spain, and they've got a huge lake there called Lake Albufera, which is one of the largest freshwater lakes in Europe, actually.
I've been there.
And have you been there? Yeah, famous for the flamingos.
Yeah,
that's where they never know when the flamingos are going to be there. Obviously, I think it's around January, February kind of time. But that's where they migrate to, I believe.
No, it is, and I know exactly where what you're talking of. It's my mother-in-law lives in Spain, and actually just south of Valencia.
Yeah, that's right.
And every time I've been up there, I've yet to see them. So it's a timing.
I've never seen them. I've been so many times and never seen them. Wonderful lake as well, I will say that.
Exactly.
And there's another. By the way, flamingos, just beautiful creatures, aren't they? When you see them close up, the coloration on them, just.
It is. It's definitely a birder, but even if you're not a birder, for me, it's still a spectacle to go and have a look at.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, on to the Spice Islands of Zanzibar, Pemba, and Mafia. So starting with Zanzibar, which again, it's one of those places that I think everybody's heard of. Might not necessarily know a huge amount about, but it just evokes, the essence of spices, exoticism, and of course, we all know that Freddie Mercury was born there. I think that's the other thing that it's famous for.
I'm glad you know that. It's something I always point out to people. It's like, Freddie Mercury was born there.
Yeah, come on,
yeah. And I'm a big Queen fan. So,
place, is it?
Beg your pardon?
I said it doesn't look such a bad place, does it?
No, and I think the one thing with Zanzibar, and I'll just start off with the Spice Islands, and they've been given the nickname the Spice Islands because the main industries there are spices. It's cloves, it's nutmeg, it's cinnamon, pepper, and it really is it's spectacular. I mean, you always, whenever I come back from there, my suitcase is filled up with these spices. But yeah, we'll go through Zanzibar, and then go into Pemba and Mafia, and I think everyone is Zanzibar is well known, and it's well known for many reasons. And I think the one thing with Zanzibar, it's well known. It's got a massive history, and I think when we were talking about Namibia a couple of weeks ago, it was, how Zanzibar became part of the British and a British protectorate because they gave part of Namibia away, or Botswana away. And so it goes back a long time to when I think it was Bartholomew Dias, no, sorry, Vasco da Gama, one of the Portuguese sailors. He was one of the first Europeans to find it. The Portuguese took over. The Sultan of Oman then came in and took over for a very long time. And it's probably got a more sort of it's more well known for, I think, the negative side, which is the slave trade. And Zanzibar was a well-known spot for the slave trade market, particularly on the east coast of Africa, going to the east. And I'm just going to throw this in because we mentioned this very briefly about David Livingstone, and he's well known for the first European to see Victoria Falls. But I want to give a shout out to David Livingstone because he is, and I don't think many people know this, that he pretty much single-handedly stopped the slave trade on the east coast of Africa.
Really?
And it was his writings and his pressure and his status as well with the monarchy at the time, because they had a very close tie with the Sultan at the time, and through David Livingstone putting pressure on the empire. They literally took their entire naval fleet from the west coast of Africa, where the slaves were going out to the New World, the Americas, moved them all the way around to the east coast, and within a year the slave trade was stopped. So wow. That's a long history. It's a long conversation. That's a very, very short description about Zanzibar and the slave trade. But Stone Town itself on Zanzibar, it's a living museum. It literally is a living museum. It's a mix of Arabic, European, Asian, African cultures. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's just got this eclectic atmosphere that floats through these very narrow, winding streets and literally ancient buildings. As I said, its architecture just reflects its history, basically. And it was a massive trading point or port. The cultures, the tastes, you mentioned it, the doors. Every doorway
I love the doors. They're just fascinating.
Just phenomenal. So this goes back years, and it's a place that, go to Zanzibar. A lot of people skip Stone Town and they shoot right up to either the north coast, the very far north coast, to go and spend some time on the beaches up there. But spend some time in Stone Town, take a night or 2 nights, and just go and wander through the streets of Stone Town, take in the spice market, take in the museums, because it really is, it's a spectacular place to go and explore. And some phenomenal guides to go and
I have to echo that. It's one of the few places that we've been talking about that I have actually been to. And I was there on a fam trip, so I was only there for a couple of days. So, we went to see the beaches, but we did spend quite a bit of time in Stone Town. And you said it. It's like stepping back in time, and it was very, I suppose exotic is the word, but it did feel like, you were really in another world completely. Like I say, walking down these back streets. We went to the old sort of market, which looks like it hasn't changed in 200 years. Really, it was very. We saw cows' heads being chopped up and God knows what else. It was very raw, if you know what I mean.
Very raw.
Absolutely wonderful experience. And like you say, all of the doorways, which I just found fascinating. I really wanted to buy a Zanzibari chest. They're obviously very famous for building these chests, these, I don't know if they're teak or mahogany, and they're incredibly intricate in their designs. And I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to buy myself one of these chests. They're not cheap. That's all I'll say. They're not cheap. But they are incredibly beautiful. One day.
I'm glad you don't want to walk away with the door.
Yeah, well, yeah. The wife would kill me. On to Pemba. So Pemba, not too far away.
Pemba, yeah. So Pemba and I'm going to put Pemba and Mafia into the sort of the same bracket here. Now, Pemba and Mafia are not really that well known. Zanzibar is very well known from a beach destination, a scuba diving destination, a snorkeling destination. And to be honest with you, I prefer Pemba and Mafia. It's out of the way. To me, they're more beautiful. As in, I mean, that picture I think says it all.
Yeah.
It's a lot more commercialized. It's just, so with Pemba, it has an amazing coral reef system, abundance in marine wildlife. To me, it's got some of the best diving opportunities in East Africa. The water around there is the visibility is phenomenal. It's very warm, so literally you're looking at about 26 degrees centigrade constantly throughout the year. So it's one of these places that, if you want to go and do a safari and then do part of a beach destination afterwards, and this is what I love about Tanzania as well as Kenya, which we'll talk about next week. It is very easy to do.
Yep.
And it's once again, I think it's so easy for people to be careful. I'll say this, copy and paste an itinerary to say, okay, just go to a resort on Zanzibar because it's easier and it's less logistics. Go and find out stuff that's happening in Pemba or Mafia Island, because it's just one of these places. They're remote, they are pristine, they almost feel untouched. Where Zanzibar's getting that feeling of it's becoming a little bit more commercialized. And it's just, remember Pemba and remember Mafia.
I think there's a few more of the kind of the resorts kind of complexes coming onto Zanzibar now, which I suppose was always inevitable as well.
Exactly, 100%.
Mafia will just touch on. I was just this was the first picture that came up on Shutterstock when I put in Mafia. But anyway, I think that's more like what we're looking for. Again, looks
pretty. Mafia is small. It's a really small island. The lodges that you have there are pretty basic. They're comfortable but basic. But if you just want to get away from the crowds, and I mean, the hospitality there is spectacular. The people are amazing. But from a snorkeling and a scuba diving perspective, I don't think you can get much better anywhere in the world, to be honest.
Yeah, that looks out of this world. And I guess they have the old flying foxes as well.
Flying foxes, yeah.
Superb. On to culture. 127 different tribes in Tanzania.
So I mean, there's 127 different tribes in Tanzania, and this is the one thing that amazes me with Tanzania is that, over all the years that that Tanzania has literally been independent state, there's been very little, if none. I mean, tribal get-togethers, sort of, any problems, and it pretty much comes down to the very first president of Tanzania made it mandatory that everyone speaks one language, and that was Swahili. Mm-hmm. So there's English and there's Swahili, and every one of those 127 different tribes would have their own dialect. But everyone, no matter where you come from, if you're born and raised in Tanzania, you will learn Swahili and you'll learn English. And I think this has just brought the country together as a people. It's a very peaceful, loving country. It's I love it, and that's one thing I feel very, very safe whenever I go there. But the reason I've chosen two sort of tribes to talk about is one, the Maasai, because I think they go synonymous with East Africa. Now, the Maasai tribe actually, if you look at their tribal grounds, go between Tanzania and Kenya. So we will talk about them again next week. But just a bit of history on the Maasai. They come from the Nilotic area, the Nilotic origin. And as I said, they've become synonymous with East Africa. They well known because of the parks that they surround and their red shukas and dress. They have this reputation of fierce warriors. Their trancing music and their dance, their jumping, that they are well known for jumping and jumping high up into the air. There we go. And it's a tribe that takes you back. I just feel, I don't know, I being African, born and raised in Africa, and it's just a tribe I love. I've got a lot of friends that are Maasai, and I love spending time with them. It's just they've held on to their culture. They've held on to what they do and the way they live, and how can I put it? shukas, their dress. They haven't lost that. There's a little bit of westernization coming into it because I see Maasai walking around now with a cell phone attached to their belt, but I think that's going to happen anywhere in Africa.
I'm sure it is. They are obviously. Well, I'm saying obviously. Were they the largest tribe in East Africa by a stretch? You're saying there's 127 different sort of cultures, tribes in Tanzania. Were the Maasai the largest?
That's a very good question, Jed. I'm not 100% sure if they are the largest tribe, but I think they definitely are one of the largest tribes. If you go into Kenya, you'll start getting tribes like the Samburu, for example, as well. That's also another very large tribe and well known. So I'd have to actually do some homework, and I'll see if I can find an answer to that. I don't know if they are the largest tribe, but I'll definitely ask a friend of mine.
Yep. Super.
But the thing I love about them is the colors. I mean, the colors.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's spectacular. I mean, I'm actually wearing a Maasai belt at the moment because I love the color with all this brown and khaki, and it just brings it to life.
It was interesting actually again when we were looking at the photos for this, these incredibly bright colors of the Maasai, and when we come onto the next crowd, the Hadzabe, they're not as much for the colors, the Hadzabe, are they?
So, the Hadzabe, some people call them the Hadza. The correct name is the Hadzabe.
Yeah.
This is the last community of genuine, authentic hunter-gatherers in Africa.
Wow.
We spoke about Lake Eyasi, and Lake Eyasi has been their homeland for over 10,000 years. So, they are still holding on to their traditional way of life. They're hunting, they're gathering of fruits, honey. And for me, one of the most authentic experiences in Africa right now for me is spending a day with them. You go and spend a day on foot, and you go and hunt with them. You got to be pretty fit of foot, and you got to keep up with them. But they're not going to put on a show for you. They're just doing what they do. And you do get some Maasai tribes around East Africa that will put on a show for you, which I don't like.
Yeah.
If you can find that authenticity, that's what you want. And to me, the Hadza is, if you have the stomach for it as well, because it can be pretty raw, they'll take you out and you go hunting with them. You go and watch them. And this is not for everyone. They'll go and find an antelope, and they'll shoot an antelope with a bow and arrow and take it home for them because that's what they're going to eat.
Wow.
They'll go and climb a tree and go and raid a beehive for the honey. If you want proper authenticity when you're looking at a cultural experience, this is as probably close as you will ever get to it.
Wow. It sounds, it sounds like quite an incredible experience to be had for those brave enough to, and adventurous enough, I should say, to join them. I love the fact that actually when you were saying that they don't put on a show as well, and I kind of get that as well. I've been to a number of different places around the world where there is, where there's sort of there's cultural elements, but it's this is another conversation for another day, Warren. We're going to have to do a wrap up at some point with all of these kind of different points, because there's that element of preserving the culture, and tourism is obviously a means of helping to preserve the culture. But can you do it in an authentic way whereby the culture is truly preserved and not just put on as a show? And that's the kind of hard part, I guess.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just on that, just very quickly for people that are listening, that when you talk about these tribes in Africa, I think some people might get quite a bit of a hesitation and be quite nervous when you're talking about certain tribes in Africa. You will never ever see someone without a smiling face in any of these tribes. It's probably the most hospitable continent I've ever been on, and whether it's the Hadza, whether it's the Maasai, whether it's the Zulu in South Africa, no matter where it might be, they are so welcoming to visitors to come and see them and to experience their way of life and their culture, and they love it, and you will be welcomed with open arms.
It's interesting actually that you've just reminded me. Actually, I was in, and I know we're going to be covering it in a future episode. I was in Madagascar actually about this time last year, more or less to the day actually, And it was interesting. I was with a colleague, and we were through Tanna, and we were up in the north as well. And for those of you out there that aren't familiar with Madagascar, Madagascar has 80% of its population have no access to electricity. So it's a very basic type of lifestyle. And my colleague was saying, God, it just breaks your heart, doesn't it? This incredible poverty. And I said, well, we've been here for a week, and I haven't seen anybody unhappy. Genuinely, I haven't seen anybody that looked miserable. I haven't seen anybody that looked as though they were really going without. Yeah. And I was just sort of thinking, is that again the lens that we put on? We imagine if they're walking barefoot, and if there's kids playing in dusty streets with a makeshift football, are we using our lens to say, well, because you haven't got what we've got, you are therefore in poverty, and therefore I should feel sorry for you? And it just felt a bit patronizing to me. It's like, what, they seem quite happy, actually. All right, they might not have PlayStations, but they don't seem like they're missing it too much to me. Just an interesting sort of take on that, I guess.
You've hit the nail on the head. You've hit the nail on the head. Honestly, it's you couldn't be more correct. And we're looking at it through our eyes, or Western eyes. And no, absolutely, it's exactly that.
Yeah. A note on over-tourism. So we've kind of hinted around over-tourism on a couple of times when we've been on this journey so far throughout Africa. Yeah. And this week, it kind of upped the ante a little bit, because we were talking about Ngorongoro, and that there's elements of over-tourism there. And you very kindly provided some of your own photographs just to sort of highlight what's sort of happening there. Would you like to talk us through these?
Yeah, I think one thing that's very different with East Africa compared to Southern Africa is over tourism, and it comes down to, for me, it's the government's way of their model of tourism in their country. And if you look at Botswana, for example, they have a model where you have a very low impact, but you have a high cost. So you're going to be paying a premium for having a very small lodge and very few vehicles in an area. And I feel, this is personally my take on it, is that East Africa has done the opposite. Now, there are parts of East Africa they will try and keep the numbers low, but for the national parks, you look at Serengeti National Park and Ngorongoro National Park being the two primary ones, and then when we go to Kenya next week, it's the Masai Mara. It's how many people can we push through there, because every tourist is going to be paying, every vehicle is going to be paying, and it's the more people we can get in, the more money we make. And I think there's not necessarily that long-term view of the more people. Yeah, absolutely. Right now is great because we're getting a lot of money right now, but the longevity of looking after a conservation area, it's not going to happen. And it has to be managed exceptionally carefully. And this is a scene that I had, I think it was about 2 years ago, and this is on the banks of the Mara River in the Serengeti. So this is very northern Serengeti, for your very typical wildebeest migration crossings that's so well known. But this saddened me when I saw this. And I'm on the northern bank. This is looking at the southern bank. And we had a massive migration, wildebeest crossing that happened. But people are out of their cars. This is just insanely dangerous from one perspective. There's a lady you see on the left-hand side there in the blue shirt that's standing all by herself. Now, what I think a lot of these people, ignorantly, to their own ignorance, would not understand is that when the wildebeest are crossing this river, there are lions that lie in wait in bushes and around corners for them. So you get out of a vehicle and you go walking around to try and get a better view of wildebeest crossing a river. From a safety perspective, it's just not going to be on. And I hate to say it, but in East Africa, and I got to be careful here, because you get guides and you get really good guides, and there are phenomenal guides, and I know a lot of phenomenal guides in both Kenya and Tanzania. But then you have what's known as a driver guide, and a driver guide I like to put into the bracket of being a driver. He's not a guide. They haven't been trained in how to do things correctly from a sensitivity perspective, from wildlife, from how to deal with guests. It's you have those guides that have been well trained, they take the professional side, but then you get a driver guide that will literally just drive you around, and yeah, he'll lie back and say, "Oh, there's a lion." Sit back, and I've seen this with my own eyes, where a driver guide, his clients are looking at a pride of lions, and he's there on his phone, just playing around or even taking a nap. And so, have you taken the picture? Okay, we've taken the picture. Let's move.
Move
So,
on.
it's. I don't want people to have an experience like that. And
Yeah.
to me, I said this before today, is that your guide is probably the most important part of a safari, not the
Yeah.
destination. It's
Yeah.
your guide and the kind of person you're having. So, yeah, this scene is inside the Ngorongoro crater. This picture, I think, if I remember correctly, there's 36 vehicles that are lined up. There's some that are double lined up behind, and they're busy looking at, believe it or not, a mating pair of lions that were probably about 80 meters off the road. So two lions, male and female, 80 meters off the road, and you've got 36 odd vehicles here trying to view that. And that to me is just not how anybody should be experiencing. It's sad. It's and this just hasn't been controlled properly. You look in Southern Africa, for example, at the private conservancies. And yes, there are private conservancies, so you can control them better. But you have a maximum of 3 vehicles, sometimes 4 vehicles only in a sighting. That sensitivity to the sighting that you're looking at. East Africa is different. And I don't want to put anyone off from these pictures, but it's more of the sense of, I just want people to say to their guide or their driver when they're experiencing this, like, this is not on, this is not right. We don't want to be bun fighting it with 6 other vehicles, because road rage happens out in safari in these kind of circumstances.
Really?
You have tourists shouting at each other. You have driver guides that are shouting at each other because one's cutting in front of the other, and it's like, why are you here in Africa? It's this is not the experience that I want people to have. And it can be done correctly. This is the thing that irritates me. It can be done correctly, but it isn't.
Yeah. And especially, it just seems crazy when you see that many vehicles and everybody bunched up when, the past 5 weeks we've been talking about destinations that, if anything, are suffering from under-tourism, where the experience is, well, it's far better than what we're looking at right now, really.
A lot of this, I think, and it's education of the tourist that wants to come. I think a lot of people want to come and say, "Oh, I want to just see the big 5," which is a term I despise. I must be honest, I don't like that term, the big 5, because there's so much more to see in Africa than just 5 animals. And it's a tick list. It's like, okay, I've ticked, I've seen a lion, tick, I've seen an elephant, tick, I've seen this. Whereas let's immerse yourself into Africa and let's really take it in. And yeah, we're going to see a lot, but not like this.
I kind of equate that form of tourism to it's fast food, isn't it? It's fast food. It's basically, I want to get in, tick, like I say, tick it off, or have a selfie next to it or whatever, and then get out as quick as possible. Like you're in some kind of a rush, when destinations like this truly are meant, to be savored.
Exactly.
I'd want to say, not this particular experience that we're looking at, but I'd want to savor the experience of Africa, and take my time over it and just appreciate every minute, really.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about Ngorongoro, sorry, Jed, about the Ngorongoro crater, which we're looking at, there was a picture taken in Ngorongoro crater. This is in the dry season, peak season. I mean, other than the crowds, it's dusty as hell. It's an unpleasant experience. It really is not nice, because you're just driving in everyone else's dust. And if, low season in the crater, where it's green and it's beautiful and the waters it's stunning. It's absolute, to me, it's my favorite time. Low season in the crater. If you really want to go into the crater, that's the time you go, is low season.
Yeah, I love it. Warren, that is us. We're our hours are going to be an hour and a half now.
Time's flying.
Time flies when you're having fun. Next week we are going to be going to Kenya, as we mentioned a couple of times. So just to the north. What can we look forward to next week, Warren?
Kenya, it's a difficult one. It's and I say that not in a negative way at all. It's a difficult one because it's for me it's probably it is Africa's probably most revered safari destination. For me, it's a country that just it screams romance, thrill, adventure. It screams the classic safari. It's that's a Kenyan safari. And I had a client of mine, a very good friend of mine in the States, that said, listen, Warren, my very last safari, where would you recommend we go? If I had one last time, I just, without a doubt, I said Kenya. And I said, it's Kenya, let's do it. And we did it. And, he came back to me afterwards and he said, I can see why, 100%. It's most well known for the Masai Mara, but there's so much more. You have Amboseli, you have Samburu, you have Mount Kenya, which has its snow-covered peaks as well at times. It has the Aberdares, it has Laikipia Plateau, Savo East, Savo West, Mombasa, Watamu, Malindi on the coast. There's so much. It's going to be another hour and a half talk, I think.
We're going to book in an hour and a half for next week, I think.
I think so.
Perfect stuff, Warren. At that juncture, we'll leave you to it. Thanks a million for your expertise as always this week on talking us through a little bit of a sample of what we can look out for if we're going to consider Tanzania during the low season. But much appreciated as always. Have a great week, and looking forward to catching up with you next week for Kenya.
You too, Jed. Thanks you. Ciao. Bye bye.
Cheers. So there we go. So that's our show for this week. I just want to highlight to everybody that we have got our previous episodes are available on YouTube, also on iTunes as podcasts. We're only getting those uploaded at the moment, so you'll find South Africa has already been done. We'll be releasing Botswana this week on podcast. We're also on Spotify, where you can find not only this series for Africa, but also a plethora of destinations from all around the world. But this full series will be available to download on YouTube as well. And finally, before you go, please do join the Low Season Traveler movement. Together we are trying to improve the global travel industry and alleviate over-tourism by traveling just during the low seasons in each destination. And as has been pointed out today, yet again by Warren, in Southern Africa, but also around the world, the low seasons really are a wonderful time to travel. And not only do we get to save money, but also we get to save tourism as well. So please do join the movement and follow us. You'll find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we're under Low Season Traveler. So please do join us. But that's us for this week. Thanks a million for your company yet again, and look forward to seeing you next Monday, same time. All the best.